Let's start with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen obviously really came into his own last year. Shouts to our guy Evan Silva, had him on the pod last year and talked about him as a potential MVP candidate. And lo and behold, as we're entering the 2021 season, Josh Allen has an average draft position of QB number 2, only behind Patrick Mahomes. What do you think of Allen heading into this year, Sean?
Yeah, so right now in my projections, he's QB2, but honestly, you could make a case for either he or Mahomes. And last year, I was a little bit bearish on him because, I was projecting a bit more regression in his rush touchdown percentage. I thought Zack Moss would eat into the goal line carries a bit. That didn't happen. So, he had an 8.3 rush touchdown percentage in 2019. And then last year, it only dropped to 7.9%. I'm projecting him down to 7.3, which is 7.4 rushing touchdowns. That's still, really good for a quarterback like him. And then we saw the breakout season through the air. I think the fact that he has Stefon Diggs and offensive coordinator Brian Daboll's still with the team, that's going to help the continuity. So I'm not projecting much regression for Josh Allen this year. The ceiling's the limit with him with his dual threat ability. So I have him neck and neck with Patrick Mahomes heading into 2021.
Absolutely. I can't put him ahead of Mahomes, but I think he's got a clear case for the number 2 quarterback position. I mean, the rushing touchdowns have been there. He's a big guy, so I think I worry about him running a little bit less than I do a guy like Kyler Murray or a guy like Lamar Jackson. And then, of course, Dak Prescott coming off the injury. So I worry about those guys a little more holding up, whereas Allen, I think, just because of how humongous he is, I think he's going to be a consistent rushing threat going forward. I like him as that QB2 spot. As far as the backs go, that's kind of been the issue in Buffalo. The touchdowns, right? It's Singletary, Zack Moss. How many touchdowns do they get? And where do you take them, given that Josh Allen is going to be in a pitcher? First of all, what's your breakdown of Singletary Moss, just their workload split heading into the year?
Well, I mean, first off, I want to love these running backs. This is one of the elite offenses in the NFL, which is typically when you want to, invest in the running game. But it's hard to get excited about either one of these guys, considering it's a pass-heavy team, and Josh Allen is the best runner on the team. So, Zack Moss, his touchdown upside is capped, certainly by Josh Allen, and then his receiving upside is capped by Devin Singletary. And then I think adding Matt Breida as the number 3 running back in the offense caps both of their ceilings. So I have this pretty split heading into the year. I've heard rumors that Zack Moss might inherit more of a workhorse role, but I just don't see it. I think as long as Singletary's healthy, he's going to eat into Moss's, obviously his receiving share, but also the running game. So I'm staying away from this group as a whole. I'm a little bit worried about Singletary. I would consider him a good upside stash. But with Matthew Breida on the team now, he overlaps with his skill set a little bit more. So I think even if Zack Moss goes down, I don't think Singletary will necessarily be an RB2, RB3 value like he would last year. So just overall, it's too murky. Josh Allen is this offense, so I'm staying away from all these backs.
I think it's interesting because Moss is going in Fantasy Pros half PPR consensus ADP. Moss is going as the RB 38. Singletary is going as the RB 40. So you have Moss a couple of spots ahead. I really don't think Breida is going to be a factor. I feel like you're on your Matthew Friedman shit. You're taking over his role as like hyping up a number 3 running back. I think Breida is going to have the exact same role as TJ Yeldon, which is like active for special teams or inactive period. Like, or, you know what I mean? Or because actually Yeldon didn't even play special teams, if I'm not mistaken. So it was more so active if they need a third back, because one of the top 2 are not healthy. I think, but Breida can play special teams. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think he'll be active, unlike Yeldon sometimes, who was a scratch. But I don't think he will really see the field much, because even if you look at how Daboll and Sean McDermott kind of broke out the running back usage last year, it was all Moss and Singletary really. And, when Moss went down, you just saw almost all Singletary, in the postseason. So I'm not really concerned about Breida. I do think that, having these 2 guys going at 38 and 40, on a high-powered offense. I think there's some intrigue there, but I would look to Moss as a higher upside guy this year. I do agree with you that I think Singletary's thought of as more the pass down back, and the splits with and without Moss last year for Singletary. He got more usage, like significantly more usage in the run game in the games Moss was out, again, because they don't like to use that third back, whoever it may be, like we Breida this year. So I think Moss is a high upside guy that has an outside shot at a top 24 finish, whereas Singletary, I think he's kind of going to be that RB3 flex guy, regardless. As far as the wideouts go, Stefon Diggs, I'm assuming he's top 5 guy. For you this year, he's going as the wide receiver 3. I don't think there's really much to talk about with him. He gets open. It's a offense that loves to throw the ball. But here's one that I think is interesting. You have Cole Beasley, you have Gabe Davis entering year 2, and then you have the new addition, Emmanuel Sanders, kind of taking over for that John Brown role, maybe a little bit of a different receiver. How do you see that battle shaking out?
Yeah, like I was so excited about Gabriel Davis heading into the season, and then they signed Emmanuel Sanders, and that just evaporated. But you want to invest in this Bills passing game. So like you said, we don't need to talk about Stefon Diggs. I'm still interested in Beasley, Davis, and Sanders. We have to remember that John Brown missed 9 games last year, so I think Beasley and Davis benefited from that. So when all 4 receivers are healthy, it kind of like cannibalizes itself. But I think Beasley is the safest play. I think he has that role entrenched in this offense. He's going to be a high floor player every week, but with, Josh Allen's breakout, he does have a higher ceiling than we've seen in the past. So I love getting Beasley as like my wide receiver 4 or 5 in a PPR format. And then when it comes to Gabe Davis and Emmanuel Sanders, I mean, it's anyone's guess at this point. I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be more involved than people would like to think. So right now I have them projected neck and neck, really, when it comes down to receptions. But obviously Davis has the higher ceiling. So I think in best ball formats, he's the guy who would take later on, and you would hope like Beasley or Sanders goes down. But right now, I think they all sort of cap each other's ceiling.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely a situation where it's not ideal because you have 3 guys. The way I would attack it is, I think it's all Gabe Davis for me. I don't know if I'm going to own much of the other 2 guys because, and this is strictly a play on something that, will come up at various times, I'm sure, throughout this podcast, but aging curves, right? So you have Cole Beasley in his mid-30s, early to mid-30s. You have Emmanuel Sanders in his mid-30s. Those are years where you start seeing, big dips in wide receiver production year over year, not just the efficiency, but, just the per game production. Guys tend to get hurt more. Whereas Gabriel Davis is entering his age 22 season. And since Pro Football Reference began tracking, targets back in 1992, you're talking about a 36% increase in targets per game from age 21 to age 22, 40% increase in receptions per game, 38% increase in yards per game, 33% increase in touchdowns per game. So you expect Davis to make that big year 1 to year 2 leap. And he's what did they call him on that game last year? Mr. Perimeter or something. He was just making all those crazy catches against Baltimore, I believe it was. So I think Davis is the guy you want to own, especially because he's going wide receiver 64 right now, whereas you have Beasley going at 46. I think Davis has the upside to pay off Beasley's ADP, whereas Beasley, is more likely to kind of fall down into that next bracket or start to struggle with injuries. And then Emmanuel Sanders at 74. I mean, he could be a value. I agree. I think he'll be a little more involved, but when is he going to start really declining? He played 17 games a couple of years ago. He's getting up there in age. I think Davis is the guy you want to own just because of those aging curves that we've seen, for the past, 3 decades.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that even though it's crowded, we definitely want to attack the Bills wide receivers. There's just too much potential in this offense.
All right, so we're going to do, and we don't need to talk about the tight ends much. I mean, you have Jacob Hollister there. You have Dawson Knox there. Hollister's a little better pass catcher, I think. I don't think these guys are going to be too fantasy relevant unless you're in deep leagues. So get right into our Bills prop, Sean.
Yeah, so my prop is, we kind of talked about it, but who will have more receptions this year, Gabe Davis or Emmanuel Sanders?
I have it. I do have it close. I have Davis with about 5 more, 4 more to be exact. But I'm going Davis, without question. Davis just being a 22-year-old and Sanders heading into his age 34 season. I just think there's a lot more potential for missed games with Sanders. Improbable comeback coming off that nasty injury a couple years ago. But I think Gabriel Davis is the guy. And that's going to be my number 2 target. And I just think he's the best value of the 3, with Sanders second and Beasley third. So that's where I'm putting it. What do you have it at? Just curious. Do you have Sanders or more?
Both. Well, the reason I ask is I have them both at 46. Now
okay.
I have Gabe Davis with 100 more yards and 1 more touchdown. He's going to be way more efficient with his targets, and he has way more upside. But I just think I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be frustrating for Gabe Davis owners as long as he's healthy, because they're talking about using him pretty heavily. So that's my only concern. It sounds like we're pretty much in line with projections.
46 each. I think Davis has a bigger chance of, blowing that one up out of the water on the upside